Emma Frame here, and welcome to Voices of Yoga podcast, co-hosted with Lindsay Porter, where we bring you inspiring yoga stories and insights from yogis and teachers from around the world. These stories highlight the benefits of yoga and encourage those who maybe haven't started yoga yet to get started, and for the more experienced to delve deeper. We hope you enjoy. This is podcast number 135 and video podcast number 3.
Namaste, this is Lindsay Porter and welcome to today's podcast on Voices of Yoga. Today I'm talking with Nitya Mohan. She's the daughter of AG and Indra Mohan, who studied with for many years the legendary Indian yoga teacher, Ayurvedic healer and scholar Sri T Krishnamacharya, widely recognised as one of the most influential yoga teachers of the 20th century. And many of you will know in recent times, yoga has been influenced by yogis who learnt from Krishnamacharya, including Pattabhi Jois, BKS Iyengar, and TKV Desikachar. And having recently been lucky enough to attend a workshop with Nitya over in Scotland, I can share how much earthly knowledge and insight Nitya has to offer, along with some of the most amazing singing I've ever heard. And Nitya is director of Svastha Yoga and Ayurvedic training programs based in Singapore. And she has been teaching for over 28 years, holds a degree in music, Sanskrit, and Vedic chanting. Nitya, it's lovely to connect with you again, and a warm welcome to you on Voices of Yoga today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Lovely to be here.
So Nitya, I was wondering if you could start by sharing with us some of the experiences you had growing up surrounded by these yoga influences and how this has shaped who you are and what you do.
I think I am very fortunate, feel very blessed every day to have been born into a family of yoga, because my father met Krishnamacharya when I was, I think, 1 year old. So my parents have both been practicing, teaching for over 50 years now. So I pretty much, as far as I can remember, yoga has been in my life. And it's the same with music, because my maternal grandmother, my mother's mother, was a classical musician. She used to sing and she lived with us. And she started teaching me to sing from when I was 3 or 4. I think our lessons started in the kitchen while cooking. So she taught me the South Indian Carnatic classical music for a long time, after which I went on to study the North Indian classical music as well. So I think yoga and music pretty much have been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, which is why it brings me great satisfaction to bring these two together in the work that I do.
Fabulous, fabulous. And then sort of the type of singing you do, because it's such an incredible experience to have. And I know when we listened to you in the workshop, you were talking about all the different scales that you get. Could you share a bit more with us about that and how that is in the Indian sense of music?
Actually, the work that I do is a combination of what I learned in both these areas, that is the classical Indian music, which, as you know, is pretty much melody-based, it's scale-based. So we have around 72 traditional scales of music. And there is a wealth of knowledge and information and a lot of very interesting connections between these different scales, emotions, the songs that are interwoven in all of these scales, music that has always been very, very spiritually associated with a lot of these scales as well. So what I actually try and bring into the practices that we do is a combination of body work, breath work, and sound work. So the body and the breath work come from yoga, from classical yoga, which I've learned as a child, and working with movements and working with the body and integrating the breath. And breath kind of forms that ideal link between music and yoga, because we need the breath to sing, right? I mean, whenever I sing, whenever I speak, I'm using my breath. So I use the connections between breath, music, body movement, and I try and integrate the knowledge that's in some of the ancient classical music texts along with the traditional yoga and classical yoga practices, so that we blend together something that is a unique experience for each of us, that we learn to use our breath, learn to use our voice for our own health and well-being. So the work that I do is kind of my own creation in one sense, as far as the scales go, because what I do with the scales is, of course, based on what I've learned in classical music, but I integrate that with the mantras of yoga. So what I do is I take mantras, words that have meanings, intentions in classical yoga, and I weave them through with the Indian classical music scales. And we combine that with the breath, with pranayama, with different practices. So that's kind of where the amalgamation of these two come from.
Lovely. And it is a very beautiful thing, because I remember being in your workshop, experiencing it and instantly loving it. But then it's only like now, like maybe 8 months later, I feel like I'm still absorbing some of the teachings you gave us. And I can feel some slight differences in my own, when I'm just doing my mantras or humming to myself. I feel like you helped me access something a little bit deeper. I'm truly grateful for that. And I'm very excited that you're coming back to Scotland next year. And before we started, we were just talking about the meaning of Svastha yoga, and it's really interesting you were talking about well-being just there. Can you just share with us again a bit more about the meaning of the name of the yoga that you have?
To be honest, for a very long time, my father never had a label, or rather, when I grew up as a child, my brother and I, Ganesh and myself, when we practiced yoga and people would ask us, what kind of yoga do you do? We didn't really have an answer. It was just yoga, Patanjali's yoga perhaps, because Krishnamacharya himself didn't really have a brand or a name for his teachings. So for a very long time, we really didn't have a name attached to the teachings that we did. But about a couple of decades ago, my parents were forced to kind of choose a name to say, okay, what are we teaching? So my father chose this word Svastha. The word swa means myself, tha means to stay. So literally to stay as myself. And he chose this word because in Sanskrit, this word means a state of balance, health and well-being. That is, I remain as myself in perfect equilibrium with my mind, body, and breath. There's good physical health, physiological health, mental health, everything is in balance. There's clarity, there is lightness. So he kind of chose this because, in one sense, it is not Svastha yoga, it is yoga for Svastha. Whatever we do under the umbrella of yoga, whatever practices we do, whatever style, whatever movements, breathing, everything should lead us to that state of health and well-being. It should lead us to that state of Svastha. So that was the intention actually of the word Svastha. And we often say, we're not actually teaching a different brand or a different style to say that, you must do it like this, do it like that. It is about doing it in a way that will help lead you to your state of Svastha, which is why we chose the word, Svastha, to stay as yourself.
Lovely. It's really interesting to hear that. Thank you for sharing it. Now, I need to ask you this question. So your brothers, all about yoga, your mum and your dad are still teaching, the obviously amazing work you're doing. When you get together as a family, what do you talk about? Is it all about yoga? Do you have deep philosophical conversations, or are you exploring other things in life because you're always doing yoga otherwise?
I think when the four of us get together, yes, of course, we do talk about other things as well in the family. But yes, my parents mostly talk only about yoga. Dinner table conversations are probably on the Yoga Sutras. Yeah, because that's pretty much what they enjoy. And my father till today studies the Yoga Sutras every day, and they're discussing, this or that in relation to classical texts and things like that. So yes, pretty much revolves around that.
That's great to hear. Now, I want you to come back to the workshop that I attended with you, because something I really enjoyed about your teaching was the use of breath as a tool, and you've already mentioned it. But there was that suggestion of starting an asana, a posture, with the breath first and finishing with the breath, so that the movement comes with the length of the breath. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about this and why it is such a valuable tool for us to have and use through our practice.
The breath is pretty much the central aspect of all of our yoga practices. All of Krishnamacharya's classical teachings were really about the breath. Classical Hatha Yoga is really about using the breath as the primary tool to bring about transformation. We said that whatever we do under the umbrella of yoga should lead us to health, well-being, and personal transformation. To do that, we use the breath in many different ways in an asana practice. And what we did in the workshop of using the breath to lead the movement is one of the classical ways in which I've always learned to practice with the breath. It allows us to establish mindfulness in the practice primarily because, I can never really program my breath, because asana practice, after a point, however varied I make it, sometimes does become routine. It becomes something that I could do without thinking about it. But I can't really make my breath of a certain length unless I'm paying attention to it. And every single time, if I'm going to allow the breath to lead, first of all, it establishes a platform of awareness, which is the foundation of any yoga practice, that I bring awareness to my body and mind through my breath. So every time, if I can actually allow my breath to lead and be aware of my breath in the movement, it really establishes a foundation of awareness in my practice. It also supports the physical movements wonderfully, because then it allows me to safely practice yoga, because if I don't watch the breath, there is more of a tendency for me to push myself. The minute I watch my breath and it's going a little out of sync, it gives me an indication, how hard should I be working? Should I move a little deeper or should I not move a little deeper? The breath gives excellent feedback as well on movements. So using the breath is actually, it's such a varied tool, just like sound is. Sound and breath are two tools that I think we pretty much have at our disposal all the time, because we're breathing all the time. And if we can really allow the breath to become a way of accessing our own mind, a way of accessing our body, it's a very valuable tool. So that practice of, breath leading movement is something that my parents have been teaching for a very, very long time. That was what we did in the workshop in some of the asanas.
Lovely. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Something else I noticed you also had an amazing talent at was drawing like yoga stick figures. You just did it flawlessly. Is that something you've taught yourself, or is there a formula to doing that?
I really don't know. That's something, again, we've been doing for a long time. We always used to draw stick figures to depict vinyasas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I don't know whether, I assume other people did it too. No.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's something we've done all the time. To draw vinyasas. That's how my mother always draws them, on a sheet for your personal practice, to know, okay, what should I be doing every day? So we always draw the little stick figures, because it also allows you to depict breath and movement. So it allows you to show, how you should be breathing when you move from one pose to another pose, because as we said, the breath is the key. So if you have a series of movements from one posture to another, and then you have the breath in between, then you know exactly how I should be breathing when I move from one position to another. So it's really useful to have those little stick figures as guides to visualize what should I be doing next.
Yeah, good insight. And it was the arrows, was it, between it that would be the in and the out breath, how you would depict that?
Yes, there were little arrows in between to indicate, an arrow in one direction for the inhale, an arrow in another direction for the exhale. So it strings the practice together quite easily with the breath.
Very nice. So if we can come back to the singing. So I was asking Nitya about potentially doing a little bit of a scale for her. So hopefully we can share over the podcast her beautiful voice. Now we've also said we're not sure how great the technology is to convey it. So we might attach some more files to listen to it. But Nitya, are you up for just giving it a go, and we'll see where it takes us?
Sure, we can try.
See, when I hear that, it like transports me right back to the banks of the Ganges. You know, it's just pure magic. Thank you for sharing that.
Most welcome.
So I wonder if there's anything else you would like to share with us about your yoga or your yoga teaching journey at all?
I'm just really thankful. That's all. Because I think, in one sense, maybe all of us should be, that we have access to some wonderful tools that help us maintain our health, well-being, sanity in the crazy world that we live in today. That it allows us to connect to our own minds and bodies better. In the Yoga Sutras, Vyasa says, there's a very famous quotation by Vyasa in the second chapter where he says, Nasti yoga samam balam. There is no power, there is no strength greater than that of yoga. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't talking about physical strength there. He's talking about the power of the mind, the inner strength that yoga gives us, the empowerment that it offers us through the various practices that help keep us centered, help keep us strong, keep us stable and happy and peaceful. And I always remember that every day, that the greatest power that yoga can give us is within us, that it is already a part of me.
Lovely. Thank you. And in terms of people finding you, more about you, what your up and coming events are, where can they go to do that, Nitya?
To the Svastha website or the Svastha Facebook. That's just swastha.net. As you mentioned, as you know, I'm coming back to Europe in the summer next year. So I will be in Glasgow, in Manchester, in Ireland as well. I'm going to be doing the part 2 of the Sound for Wellbeing workshops. And I teach, of course, in Singapore as well. There's a program coming in India next year as well. Pretty much all information is on the Svastha website.
Thank you. I know a lot of people will be very happy to hear that you're coming back to Europe. I wondered if you could lastly share with us a quote or something that's inspiring your journey.
I think the most important thing that I keep telling everyone in all of my workshops is find your voice. Find a way to connect to your voice, because our voice is a very deep part of our identity. And a lot of times we pass a lot of judgments on ourselves. I can't sing, I can't hold a tone, I can't hold a tune. But using sound as a tool is not really about how well we sing or how well we chant, because honestly, our nervous system doesn't judge us, right? Whether I sing in tune or I sing out of tune, as long as I'm enjoying it, you know, I'm going to get the benefits of it. The vibrations, the sounds, the tones. I don't really have to be a great singer to use my voice, because my voice is a gift that I have been given and I have with me all the time. So I always tell everyone, you know, find a way to connect with your voice, connect with music in some way or the other. And because that's such a wonderful tool that we all have to work with our own health and well-being. And that's pretty much the deepest part of my practice, my singing. So I would like everyone to sing.
Lovely. Nitya, such a beautiful leading light in yoga, and I just thank you very much for connecting with us today, all the way from Singapore, and we look forward to catching up with you again. Thank you so much, and namaste.
Thank you, Lindsey.
Thanks for tuning in to Voices of Yoga, and we hope you feel inspired. You can find more of our free podcasts at www.voicesofyoga.com, and we are on all the main podcast platforms too. We are very open to comments and suggestions, so if you'd like to also leave us a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. If you would like to know when the most recent podcast is going to be broadcast, You can sign up to our newsletter on the website and we will drop you an email with that recent update. Voices of Yoga is our passion project, and if you like what we're doing and you would like to support us, it would be very much appreciated. And you can do that through a very small donation on our website on the donation button if you feel so inclined. If you would like to collaborate with us in terms of sponsorship, advertising, or even suggest coming on and being a guest, then please drop us an email at voicesofyoga@mail.com. So thanks again, and we look forward to bringing you another inspiring yoga story next week. Namaste.